Blog Talk Radio.
The PWTorch Livecast is brought to you by Audible.com, a leading provider of spoken audio, information, and entertainment. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Get a free book when you sign up for a free trial at audibletrial.com/ProWrestlingTorch. Again, that is audibletrial.com/ProWrestlingTorch.
Well, I'm afraid I've got some bad news. Because 2014 isn't suddenly going to bring us the end of government corruption. In fact, the only thing it's going to bring us is one step closer to the apocalypse.
What? You going to get sick?
That's a possibility.
Huh? Oh. Huh? Oh my God! He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke!
Oh man!
You need to get somebody to ghostwrite for Pat McNeill. By that I mean anybody'd be better.
The bull would turn.
WrestleMania at the bar. What are they gonna do at the bar? Let's watch at the bar.
Oh, so come on down to the party. Donation, put it online. Come on down to the party. Donation, put it online.
Hello! Happy New Year, you people! Today is Wednesday, January the 1st, 2014. I am your host, Pat McNeill, bringing you today's installment of your favorite PG-rated pro wrestling podcast. This is the PWTorch Livecast. Your Wednesday intro song, by the way, is... That is Calling All Nations by Kids on Bridges, who are the official artists of the PWTorch Livecast. Their music is available on iTunes. And we're coming at you with 60-plus minutes of wrestling and fun. And if you're not careful, you just might learn something before we are done. We are taking your calls, 646-721-9828 here on Blog Talk Radio. We're taking your emails, pwtorchlivecast@gmail.com. The chat room is open on pwtorchlivecast.com. And yes, Twitter is open too. You can send in your questions to us via Twitter just by typing in Real Pat McNeill. That's how you do it. But right now we have something very important to get to. Hold on a moment. I hear that. There we go.
That's what it's time to do, so it really makes me happy to introduce to you.
This time we're going to let our guest introduce himself.
Hey, everybody, listen. To me. My name is Armando Alejandro Estrada.
All right, welcome back to the show, Armando. It's great to have you here.
What took you so long to bring me back? I mean, I thought I was pretty good. I thought I was pretty entertaining. I thought it was the highest viewed, most listened to Torch Livecast in the history, and it takes you 2 years to bring me back. I'm a little disappointed, Pat.
Well, you were the most listened to Wednesday Livecast of 2012. Yes, that is true. Setting a new standard at the time. We've been trying to work with your busy schedule because you're everywhere. I mean, let's face it.
Hey, Happy New Year. Thanks for having me back. It's been a while, and I'm excited about this new year. And here I am in lovely Chicago, Illinois, driving around in 20-degree weather. There's about a foot of snow coming down. And I like driving by and watching all the cars stuck on the side of the road. And I pull up next to them and I yell at them that they should have an SUV like me. Ha!
There you go. I agree. I agree. More people should have SUVs. I have mine. You have yours. Let's see. What have you been? How have you been occupying yourself over the past several months?
Well, I'm semi-retired. I'm enjoying semi-retirement because you never fully retire from the pro wrestling industry. You're always attached in some way, shape, or form, and I'm still active on the independent scene. Recently had a little baby girl, so she's 6 months old, and She takes up the majority of my
great.
time, and I'm just loving life.
That is, well, congratulations. That's great news.
Thanks, amigo. I appreciate that.
No problem. Let's see. I know that you are a big fan of wrestling. Have you been keeping tabs on the industry over the past several months?
I do. You know, I'm a lifer, Pat. I grew up in the 80s, so when you grew up in that era, you got hooked, and it's not easy to just tune out as much.
Unhooked.
As busy as I've been, and although I'm not necessarily a huge fan of some of the content, thank goodness for DVRs, right?
Right.
I still keep up. You know, it's in my blood, and you know, still got the DVR set every Monday night. I try to watch, you know, the other programming on, you know, the Impact folks on Spike, and occasionally I'll catch SmackDown. But, you know, I think I've got a pretty good grasp of the goings-on, to answer your question.
Okay, well, we've got callers, we've got emails. Let's see, we've got the chat room is open. Let's see, where to begin? I think we're gonna kick things off with taking a couple phone calls, if that's okay.
Sure. Let's have at it.
All right. Again, for people who don't regularly listen on Wednesdays, you can ask up to 3 questions. You can make up to 3 comments, but at the end of the day,
that's a magic number.
And by order of my boss, Wade Keller, this is a PG show.
While we're waiting for our next caller, we'd like to remind you folks calling in to, keep your questions within the boundaries of good taste.
And good advice for anyone. Let's kick things off with the 862 area code. 862, please state your name and town. You're on the Livecast with Armando Estrada.
Kylan from North New Jersey.
How you doing, Kylan?
I'm very well, Pat. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Pat. Same to you. My first question for you, Armando. Former WWE creative team member Court Bauer stated on his podcast, MLW Radio, that your former charge, Umaga, was originally scheduled to tag with his brother in a babyface team. In light of this information, do you know if there were any plans for you to be placed with someone else before his change was made?
As far as I can remember, the plan was for me to be alongside Rosie and Jamal, then known as 3 Minute Warning, and something changed from, I'd say, Royal Rumble to WrestleMania, somewhere in that 10 or 12-week span. The company opted to invest in Eddie Fatu, formerly known as Jamal and better known as Umaga. They decided to invest in him as a singles talent, and they wanted to roll with him as a solo act. Well, not a solo act, but they didn't want to, they scratched the tag team, and so I was under the impression I would be with both of the big guys, and ended up, you know, with one, and I think looking back it was the right thing to do, and we had a good run.
Okay, question number 2. What was it like working with Colin Delaney on WWE's rebooted version of ECW?
Colin was a good talent. He came in, he did what he was asked to do. He worked hard, he got decent reactions, and because of that, he was offered a contract. And I enjoyed playing off of him, and I thought he was a great underdog performer that much like Mikey Whipwreck in the mid-'90s in the original ECW, I thought he played his role very well.
And my final question for you, Armando. With Paul Heyman and Zeb Coulter continuing to hold jobs in WWE as advocates or whatever term you would like to use, do you think it's possible that WWE would rehire you in that capacity?
I think timing is everything, and I think Paul is doing some of the best work of his career. I think Dutch Mantell or Zeb Coulter is doing, some of his best work, and along with some of the other managers, I think they've got a full plate right now. They've got, a nice group of talkers, and if the time is right and the dollars are right, then I could see myself back in that fold, but maybe not right now.
Okay, thanks, Armando. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise. Excellent questions. Ha.
All right. See you next week, Kylan.
You sure will, Pat.
Okay. Kylan drops off, and that opens up the line for you at 646-721-9828. Of course, email is pwtorchlivecast@gmail.com. As a matter of fact, we could probably go to an email right now. Let me see what we have here. I don't know. Yeah, too much technology, too much stuff open in front of me. Okay. Email question from Juan, who wants to know, Armando, what are your thoughts on the return of Batista, which is coming in, I believe, a couple of weeks?
I think it's exciting, if you're a fan, and Dave's going to add, some energy. He's going to bring some energy to the mix, and he comes in at a time, as they like to call it, WrestleMania season. It'll be interesting to see who he gets paired off with and who he'll work with at the big show, and is he going to be around? Is he back full-time? Is he back part-time? Is he back a la Chris Jericho, seasonal schedule, come in for a few months, go away for 6, come back for a few? I'm curious to see what exactly Dave Batista will be doing, but I do think that when he left in, was it 2010 maybe? I thought he was doing some of his best work as a heel. So very interested to see in what the future holds for one Dave Batista.
Yes, indeed. We're going to take more calls in a moment. However, it is time for our first set of plugs. The PWTorch Livecast is brought to you by Audible.com. If you like audiobooks, and I know a lot of you in our audience do, then you should check out Audible.com. It's owned by Amazon, meaning you have access to over 150,000 audiobooks from the top authors. John Grisham, Mitch Albom, Tom Clancy, Stephen King, they're all there. You sign up, go to audibletrial.com/ProWrestlingTorch. You get the first book free, then it's $14.95 a month. You pick out one book a month, any book you want. They send it to you. Listen to it however you want through their app. All sorts of ways to do it now, and you can cancel at any time. Very simple. Go to audible.com because you shouldn't have to learn the alphabet to know how to read. And let's go back to the telephones, see what we have here. The 773 area code. 773, station name and town. You're on the livecast. Armando Estrada.
I know that area
Hello,
code.
caller. 773 area code. This is not a trick question. Are you there? Okay. We'll put that person back on hold. They will figure it out at some point, I hope. All right.
That's one of my people. That's one of my people, Pat.
773? That's you? That's your area?
That's Chicago, baby. Chicago.
All right. Let's try this again here. 773 area code. You're on the livecast with Armando Estrada. Hello.
Boris from Chicago.
Hey, Boris, how you doing?
The weather could do better, and it's nasty out there. I'm sure he saw it. I chimed in, but Happy New Year. Got a little cold.
Happy New Year.
And I just wanted to ask a question. If you listened to the podcast yesterday, what were your thoughts on it?
My thoughts on yesterday's podcast with Mark Madden?
Yes.
I think Mark obviously is a professional, and he does talk radio for a living, which means he does it more than once a week. I think he made some good points about what's wrong with the current wrestling product, and he wasn't just talking about WWE, but he was talking about TNA as well. And the main problem, and I think a lot of people in the business agree to it, there's only one full-time company that dominates the business, and that's WWE, which means, even if the WWE product is good, which it isn't always, that's what people are getting shoved down their throats. And, a lot of people, if they don't like what they see on WWE, instead of watching a different wrestling program, they're going to turn off wrestling entirely. Armando, do you have any thoughts along those lines about the current state of the business?
Well, it's like you said, Pat. It's there's one major player. There's one. If I could use I used to be in the restaurant business, so I use a lot of food analogies. If the WWE is McDonald's, sometimes you just don't want to eat McDonald's every day. So you like burgers, but at the same time, sometimes you'll just get sick of those burgers and you want something different. And right now, quite honestly, there really is not an alternative to McDonald's. It's either eat McDonald's or stay home and cook. We want to see the industry thrive. We want to see the other companies put out a more compelling product. But until that happens, you're stuck with McDonald's.
Yeah, I mean, I get the opportunity to watch, more different indie promotions than a lot of people do, and while they each have their good points, they are not competition for WWE. Was there
Absolutely not.
Was there a specific something, Boris, about yesterday's podcast you wanted to ask about?
You pretty much hit on the head. It's just I enjoy when someone actually comes out and speaks out about this product, more so than tell us how much certain characters are making money. Nothing, I'm not pointing fingers at nothing. It just I enjoy it when people actually see through, this main product that we have now. Because I was listening to the Seth Mates podcast too, and he pretty much, it was unanimous toward, the same things, the same problems with the product, and I don't see how they can try to, do a network with the same stuff they're producing now to the fans. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's going to be, it's going to be something like, from what I understand, like UFC's network, where it's mostly going to be streamed content, online, which is the future. I mean, they're not going to, as far as I know, they're not going to have their own cable channel. They're supposed to have an announcement on this next week, though. So that means we'll probably be talking about it on next week's show.
I have one question for you, Pat.
Yeah.
What was your match here? What was your match of the year?
Mine
was Bryan Daniels against John Cena for the win.
Yeah, that was mine, and that was Wade Keller's. The main event of SummerSlam. Yeah, that was definitely something special, I think. Armando, is there any other? What was your favorite match of 2013?
Off the top of my head, I'd go with CM Punk and John Cena from the Raw before WrestleMania, where the winner got where John Cena put his number one contendership on the line. I thought that was one of the best wrestling matches and storytelling that I've seen in several years, dare I say, back to 2009, Undertaker Shawn Michaels WrestleMania.
Yeah.
That's how good that match was. They put in 30 minutes on TV. You don't see that, Pat. They don't.
No,
nobody puts in 30 minutes on TV. They don't even put 30 minutes in on a pay-per-view.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. You know, I mean, they've had some long matches, and they had a tag match on SmackDown that pretty much got extended into 2 more tag matches and took up the whole second hour. But yeah, I mean, they don't do that as often as perhaps they should.
No, and I mean, I think, you know, it still says wrestling on the marquee. You know, and maybe that's part of the problem is we've gotten away from the wrestling. It used to be so simple. You had a guy you liked and a guy you didn't like, and they went out there and they wrestled. We didn't care if he was dating this guy's ex-wife or, you know, sometimes you just didn't even need a storyline. You just had a good guy and a bad guy. Really simple.
Yeah.
And an 8 or 10 or 12-minute match.
Right. That's true, and that's and that's how they they would do the shows in order to get you in the door when they came to town at the end of the month or sometime during the month. And that's what it was all about.
I enjoy when a guy went up to the guy having the title on and said, "I want to challenge you for the title," and if he said no, he'll smack him, and there you go. You got the fight right there.
There's a story.
Right. You don't have to have complicated stories to do pro wrestling, but they do have to make sense.
Keep it simple. The KISS method, Pat. The KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid.
Well, doesn't always happen that way these days. All right, Boris. Thanks for checking in with us this week.
Have a great beginning to the new year. Thanks, Armando. Appreciate you coming on the show.
You got it. Chi-Town represent.
All right. That's right. All right, Boris drops off, and that opens up a line for you. It is 646-721-9828. Of course, the email is still open, PWTorchLivecast@gmail.com. And let's see here. Do we have any? I don't think we have any new Twitters. But if you go to the website PWTorch.com, the Wednesday livecast poll is up, where we ask you who you think John Cena will face at WrestleMania this year. Right now, leading the balloting with 29% of the vote is The Undertaker. Second with 12% is Dave Bautista, and third with 10% is Daniel Bryan. But vote now. Let us know what you think, and it's all there at PWTorch.com. Go to the McNeill livecast poll and cast your ballot. And we're talking with Armando Estrada, who was part of WWE from April 2006 to November 2008, and then got another contract and where he stayed with the company for 18 months and did not wrestle.
I got to sit at home and collect the check. It was a year and a half paid vacation, Pat.
Yeah, that's that's good work if you can get it, I got to say. Now, you're obviously taking care of your daughter right now, but I mean, at some point, the company could call you back, and you might have to, and you might hypothetically, if the money was right, go back out there.
Well, yeah, I mean,
hypothetically, yeah,
it's got to be worth it for me, to go away from home and away from the family. My first run in the company, it was almost 8 years ago. I mean, I wasn't married. No family.
Right.
Just full of that, that energy to go out and perform. And now things are a little different. There's some different priorities in my life, and while wrestling there's still a place in my heart for it, I have to do what's best for my family. So,
yeah,
if an opportunity presented itself, the businessman would consider it, and like I said, it would have to make sense, and it would have to make sense, if you know what I mean.
That's true. It would have to be what's best for business, for your business.
Exactly.
One of the more interesting topics of this week has been the news that Ric Flair will be on Raw next week as part of Old School Raw. I I've got to ask you this, Armando. What is it like going out after a show with Ric Flair?
Rick is the Nate. I mean, you know, he is what he is, and what you see is what you get. I've had some good times, you know, on screen and off screen with Rick. He's a hell of a fun guy to be around, and he is arguably the life of the party. And you know, we've thrown back a few, to say the least.
Yeah,
I love Rick. Rick's great.
Yeah, obviously you're a family man now, so that's not something you can do that often. But your WWE debut, it was you and Umaga, you know, going on Raw and calling out Ric Flair.
Yeah, and that was in Chicago, as a matter of fact. It was amazing because I sat in that very arena, the Allstate Arena, formerly known as the Rosemont Horizon. I sat in that arena a number of times, you know, with a paid ticket, and to get my opportunity to go out and debut in that very venue was quite a thrill for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can imagine it would be. So let's see. So looking back, you know, Umaga sort of feuded with Ric Flair. Probably the one of the better known feuds though came months later when it was Umaga feuding with Jeff Hardy. And I think a lot of people thought that they brought out the best of each other.
They did. They had some great matches together, and they had some great chemistry. And I think Jeff was on top of his game at that point. He was doing some great work, and they just gelled really well together. And you know, those guys were close outside the ring too. So anytime that you've got an extended relationship with somebody that you go out and work with, sometimes it makes the matches that much better because they trusted each other. Jeff trusted Eddie, Eddie trusted Jeff, and you know, they did good business together. They really did.
Okay, so who were the people who you would travel with and hang out with when you were there?
You know, I traveled with a number of guys in the locker room. I was, you know, I had a few guys that were Vladimir Kozlov I traveled with quite a bit. CM Punk and I traveled quite a bit, both of us being from Chicago. We were on the road quite a bit together. Referee Mike Chioda is a good friend of mine. It's always interesting, you know, listening to him tell stories. The guy's been around the business for, you know, 25, 27 years now. You know, he goes back to that era that I grew up watching. So just to name a few, you know, JTG. I used to jump around a lot too, depending on, you know, because I was on Raw. Then I was on the SmackDown ECW tour. So, you know, just a bunch of different guys that the Spirit Squad at that time I traveled with, the Highlanders I traveled with. So some good group of guys, you know, I spent a lot of time on the road with. Of course, you know, Eddie Fatu, Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas. I was around a lot of different talents, you know. Yeah.
You and I was wondering what you think of what's going on with Dolph Ziggler, because you know him going back from OVW when he was part of the Spirit Squad, and I mean, Dolph gave an interview before SummerSlam where he basically said that, you know, people were tired of John Cena and you know, maybe guys like him deserved a chance, and Dolph more or less you know, disappeared from the main event scene shortly after that.
So I got a couple things to say about that. I know Dolph real well from before the Spirit Squad. Actually, Dolph Ziggler and I had my first televised wrestling match in OVW, which lasted all of 90 seconds until Kevin Fertig hit the ring and beat the hell out of both of us with a kendo stick. But, you know, I remember when Dolph debuted in Ohio Valley, because we started right around the same time, some 9 or 10 years ago. I think he is a tremendous performer. I think he's a jack of all trades. I think he can do everything. Maybe the promo leaves a, you know, maybe there's a little bit more that needs to come out on the promo side, but I think that'll come in time. If you go back and watch Bret Hart's early promos or Shawn Michaels' early promos, you know, wasn't really compelling, you know what I mean? So I think in time, Dolph is going to get it, and he's, you know, he already gets it, but I think once he goes out and he delivers a money promo, that's when he will truly arrive. You heard the reaction for him the night after WrestleMania when he cashed in. The building absolutely erupted, and I think he's going to be there one day. I just don't know. Right now, you've got one Superman. His name's John Cena, and you've got one Batman, and that's CM Punk. So as long as you've got your Superman is healthy and Superman is selling out arenas, you don't replace Superman. You don't bring in somebody else to play Superman, right? You got Batman on the other tours, and he's selling out, and he's doing well, so you don't bring in a new Batman. So there's very few spots at the top. And if he wants to be at the top, he's going to have to be patient and wait his turn, and I think it'll come. I really do. Okay.
You know, when you were there, were there just certain, you know, unspoken rules about what you didn't say in media interviews? Just, you know, just things that you knew, it would be a bad idea to bring up.
Well, certainly there's, you know, if you're representing the company, there may be some topics that you might just not necessarily bring up. You know, I don't know if Dolph specifically said anything in an interview that might have rubbed somebody the wrong way, but you never know. I mean, you got to remember, at the end of the day, you're representing a publicly traded company that is doing a hell of a job changing its image in the eyes of most. I mean, wrestling has historically been looked down upon. You know, it doesn't get the respect that a lot of the other, you know, that a Disney or an NFL, you know, would get. So people typically will thumb their nose at it. So they've worked really hard over the last 5-6 years to keep that image. You know, that's why they're PG, and they're going to stick to PG, and they've got their sponsors, and they're doing all the right things. So you've got to keep that in mind when you're talking to the media, and you've got to remember that you're a public figure, and, you know, sometimes there's cameras everywhere. You know, we live in this age of technology where there is cameras absolutely everywhere and microphones everywhere, so got to be careful what you say and how you say it.
All right, we are talking with former WWE superstar Armando Estrada. The number is 646-721-9828. Of course, email address pwtorchlivecast@gmail.com. And the chat room is open, and Twitter is obviously always open. Let's see. Of course, this show is sponsored by and is part of the Pro Wrestling Torch. The PW Torch Livecast here airs every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, and Tuesday through Friday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. You listen live at PWTorchLivecast.com. It's brought to you by the Pro Wrestling Torch. Go to PWTorch.com, get the app, get links to all of our other ways in which you can follow the Torch through mainstream media. And yes,
your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.
You subscribe at PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Become a VIP member for $10 a month, or for you big spenders, $99 a year. You can get your email. You can get your Torch newsletter every week, either delivered electronically, or we still deliver paper copies. You can get those. Lots of exclusive audio every week, including the VIP after show, which will be up later today. Newsletters and the slick PDF file. It's a lot of fun, and we hope that you can join us and become a VIP in the year 2014. Let's see. Okay, Armando. Let's see. Outside of what are your thoughts on TNA wrestling? They're having difficulty, obviously. some financial, some creative. If you had any sort of decision-making capacity, what do you think you could do with TNA?
How much time do we have, Pat?
Yeah, 25 minutes.
25 minutes. I don't think I have enough time to divulge what I would do with TNA, but the first thing I would do is I would lose those initials. I think that kind of holds them back, and in a lot of ways. Let me say a couple things, because as a fan and as somebody who's made their living in the professional wrestling industry, I want nothing more, as I said earlier, than to see companies succeed and thrive. And McDonald's is a better company when they have Wendy's nipping at their tail to be number one. So the WWE thrived in the late 90s because they had WCW. They pushed each other. Competition is necessary. Competition is very healthy in the business world. Coke would not taste as good if it wasn't for Pepsi. Because if Pepsi all of a sudden went away, Pat, that's what Coke would do. I'm going to tell you, here's what they would do. They would change their formula to make it cheaper, and they wouldn't care if it tasted worse. Because if you wanted to buy cola, Coke is the only game in town. So it's either just like I used the McDonald's analogy earlier, if you want a burger, you either eat a Big Mac or you go home and you cook. With TNA, I think that there's an identity issue. I don't know who they are, and I don't know if they know who they are. I think they're trying to put out a product that is like WWE, but they're not WWE. So I think they come off as a photocopy of a photocopy. And in my opinion, it isn't very good. Now, I believe they have a hell of a talent roster, and I think it's absolutely wonderful that they're on Spike TV. So as long as they have a national television contract on top of the syndicated, deals that they have worldwide, I think that they're going to be just fine. But if you want to grow your customer base and your fan base, you've got to give them something different. They have arguably some of the best performers in the world, and I know Jeff Hardy, Kurt Angle. I'm a fan of some of their younger guys. Nobody that jumps out on top of me right now. Bobby Roode. I like this EC3. They've got some talent. I think Bully Ray's doing some of the best work ever. But I think, like we talked about earlier, you need to keep your storylines simple. They don't have to be overly convoluted. They don't have to be, sometimes it's just a simple, here's a good guy and here's a bad guy, and they're going to go and they're going to wrestle, and they're going to have a match, and one guy's going to try to beat the other. I mean, it's just, I don't understand why wrestling has gotten away from the basics, and I think we really need to get back to that. Get back to basic storytelling, none of this nonsense that, we're seeing on television. And quite honestly, from what I understand, and I felt this way as a fan, I still feel this way now, the best wrestling shows are the ones that aren't televised. Because the guys are out there having fun, they're relaxed, and they're not under the auspices of this writer or this script, or they got to do this in a certain time period, You want to enjoy a good wrestling show, go to a non-televised event. I don't care if it's WWE or TNA. Those are typically the best ones. I felt that way as a fan, and I feel that way as a performer.
That's interesting. So guys are more loose on the road. It's not because the impression that a lot of people have is that at house shows some of the guys half-ass their way through it.
I completely disagree with that. I think some guys go out there and they don't. It's kind of like my best work that I did in my career in WWE was not televised. You could ask Ric Flair about his best matches, that he had. People always bring up, the match he had with Steamboat at New York Knockouts, or the match he had with Terry Funk. The match he had with Terry Funk, or the matches with Steve. Right. The best matches Ric Flair had didn't make their way to TV. And when some guys get up for TV, and that's great, but see, when you've got 13 cameras, and you've got to know where every single camera is, and you've got to make sure that you're listening to your referee, and you're getting your time cues, and you've got to work. Maybe you've got this match laid out in your head, and you can put in a good 30 minutes, but they're only giving you 20. It's the house shows, to me, the live events, the non-televised events, were some of the best performances and just entertainment value that you're going to get. It's a great family interaction, and guys are relaxed, and guys get to go out there for more than 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So
I could see the attraction with that. All right. Today is a very special anniversary. It is the anniversary of perhaps one of the better-known Raws in the past several years, and it involved Armando Estrada. It was Kevin Federline versus John Cena, January 1st, 2007, in Miami, Florida. That was a big deal. Do you have any specific memories from that night? You guys ended up working twice, obviously.
Now, wait a second. Was that a 4-on-1 match? Did that match get changed? Because I recall myself, Coach, and Umaga taking on John Cena. Maybe it was Kevin Federline. Maybe we attacked John Cena afterwards. I don't know. Yeah, that's we're going back a number of years here, Pat. But Kevin Federline, say what you will about him, he was a great bad guy. People didn't like him. Even take away the fact that he was married to Britney Spears. He just had a very punchable look. What I mean by that is he's the type of guy that if you've seen him, you want to punch him in the face. He just has that look to him, Yeah,
I know people like that, yeah.
So he was a great heel. I thought he did what he was supposed to do. I won't comment on his abilities as a rapper or as an actor, but in the world of wrestling, I think he did all right.
Okay, was he? Did you get to spend? Was he a wrestling fan?
I don't know if he was a wrestling fan. I think he just kind of came in and he did what he had to do and tried to promote his record, and that's all good and fine. You don't have to be a wrestling fan. If you can contribute to the product and make it better, I'm all for it. There's a lot of guys who made a lot of money in this business who weren't wrestling fans, so I'm okay with that. Typically, the guys who have the most passion are the guys who grew up fans.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at this. What happened on the show is, it was John Cena versus Kevin Federline, and that was the opening match, and that's where you guys interfered, which set up the main event, which was, let's see here, you, Umaga, Jonathan Coachman, and John Morrison against John Cena in a 4-on-1 match.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
They added a manager and another non-wrestler to the match to stack the deck against John. Would it have made any difference if it was just Umaga and John Morrison versus John Cena?
Not really.
So you see where I talk about here, we overcomplicate, we overthink, and we make things more difficult than they need to be. It doesn't need to be 4-on-1. Put 2 on. It doesn't need to be 2 wrestlers and 2 non-wrestlers versus the top guy. Let's just do 2 wrestlers versus the top guy. 2 very capable wrestlers, I might add. Right? So, that didn't make sense, but a lot of things don't. So.
Okay. That set up probably a pay-per-view that's not around anymore, which was New Year's Revolution, which was the John Cena versus Umaga main event for the title. Anything special about that night other than the fact that you hopefully got a bigger paycheck for it?
That turned out to be the very last New Year's Revolution pay-per-view. We were in Kansas City. We did good business that night. And Umaga had been undefeated prior to that match. Nobody had, so much knocked him off his feet, let alone beat him. And I thought they had a good match. They told a good story. And John slipped one over on him with a small package. We had the rematch a few weeks later at the Royal Rumble, which they had the last man standing match. We were in San Antonio, I believe. And I thought they absolutely tore the house down. And it was the beginning of several. That match was so good. That last man standing match was so good that it was the beginning of several last man standing matches to come. It seemed as if the company started utilizing that gimmick match significantly more. It was almost like every 3 months there was a last man standing match. But before John Cena and Umaga did their thing, there probably hadn't been one in a few years. So those guys worked very well together. John was always great. I mean, the reactions for him, and at that time, the audience had been booing John before we started working with him. When we started working with John, those boos turned to cheers, which made me feel good because it told me, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're making Superman look like $1 million, and the fans. And at that time in 2006, 2007, the audience was a little older than it is today in 2014. So I thought we did a great job. It's a shame that they only had those 2 matches on pay-per-view. I think we could have ran for 6 months. But WrestleMania was around the corner, and they had other plans for John, and they had bigger plans for us. So I wish we could have resumed that program with John after WrestleMania, but we went in another direction.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, that happens sometimes. You talked about being a heel. A lot of there are people who have made a lot of money in this business being the cool heel, which is well, we're supposed to be the bad guys, but we're going to act so cool, and give the babyface so little that people aren't going to boo us. So that was a conscious decision by you guys to try and actually do your job.
Well, early on, I made the mistake of wanting to be that cool heel. When I was introducing myself and rolling the R's and everything about me, I think was very likable. I think there was a big portion of the audience, maybe the older audience member was entertained by me. And that doesn't mean you can't be, you could still be a heel and be entertaining. But when you want to be cool, now you're not being a heel. So a cool heel is kind of an oxymoron. I think you can go back and look at, the NWO. They were the epitome of a cool heel. And all that did is it didn't make any baby faces. So the crowd wanted to boo the NWO, but they made it hard. They made it hard to dislike them. When they'd come out and do their little surveys, and they had cool music, and it kind of started to change what a heel should be. But at the end of the day, guys, this is a real life comic book. Good guys and bad guys. And if the bad guys want to be the good guys, then you have a problem. So got to know your role. You've got to literally know, hey, we're not the one who's supposed to be getting the reaction. That's why when you do like a babyface match, it never gets the same reaction as a babyface heel match.
Yeah, which is why you don't do a babyface versus babyface match very often.
No, it's very, very rare, very, very special, and typically the audience will side with one over the other. You can go back and look at like Hogan Rock in Toronto from years ago. The audience decided, hey, you know what? This is actually a heel. They weren't going to boo Hogan at his first WrestleMania in, I don't know, eight years or 6 years. Hogan had been away from WWE for so long, and he comes back and he does Mania with Brock. That WrestleMania crowd in Canada was no way were they going to boo Hogan. In fact, they went the other direction and they booed Rock out of the building. But imagine if that match stands out for so many reasons, mainly because of the audience. Do you remember how they just stood there in the opening minutes of that match and didn't do a thing? And they just looked around. That crowd made that match.
Yeah,
but if you had a portion,
react to it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what it's about. It's action reaction. Audience was acting, they were reacting. And if the audience had been even remotely behind The Rock, then that match isn't as memorable as it is.
Okay. Let's see. One of the other fine moments from your run up to WrestleMania, you guys were in Portland, and Roddy Piper made his return. He'd been fighting cancer for a while, and you and Umaga were in there with Roddy Piper and Dusty Rhodes. What are your memories of that? That was quite a segment, as I recall.
Yeah. Anytime you get in the ring with a guy who's been around and is as respected as a Ric Flair, as a Roddy Piper, as a Dusty Rhodes, it's easy when you come down and you pick on the legend, when you've got a 350-pound Samoan monster. And Dusty's one of the greatest of all time. Piper's one of the greatest of all time, probably one of the greatest heels of all time. I mean, it's magic when you have performers of that caliber. That's what you dream. It's what you aspire to be. You aspire to be in the ring with them. You aspire to be as good as them. Dusty is one of the greatest talkers of all time. Piper's one of the greatest talkers of all time. And when you put good talkers in a segment together, magic can happen. And that's why 6-7 years later, you're still talking about it.
Yeah. No, it was in fact, it was very memorable, I thought. And, Roddy Piper, he's not all, he has his problems when you turn the lights on and you put him in there in the middle of the ring. He can get points across like no one else, which is why they use him so often. Same with
he's
Dusty.
the hot rod.
Right. Let's see. I don't know about Piper and Dusty, but were you given promo advice from agents and other people backstage in WWE?
Well, when I started, doing the Armando character in Ohio Valley Wrestling, Paul Heyman really took a liking to me, and he wrote a lot for me, but he wrote bullet points for me and kind of let me do my thing. So I had done well with that. I had done well in Ohio Valley Wrestling, so that when I debuted on Raw, several of the writers were already familiar with my work and wrote for me based on what they knew about me. So they kind of let me, do my thing as far as, all the stuff that you saw, Pat. That was all my invention, my creation, so to speak, whether it was saying my name, rolling my R's, the over-the-tops, facials, the cigars, the hat, the suit. That was all my work. That was all my, brainchild, so to speak. But I enjoyed the creative team that I got to work with at that time because they got me. And when you understand a performer, you can write for them. And if you don't understand a performer, then there's going to be a disconnect, because how are you supposed to write for somebody if you don't know anything about it? If you don't know what this guy's good at doing, this guy's a really funny guy, and you want to write comedy, but you don't know he's a funny guy, and you've got him out there reciting Shakespeare, it might be a little bit of a problem. Or he might be really good at Shakespeare, but he might be better at comedy. So I don't know the process now as far as if the talent is, do they interact with creative on the levels of, hey, I'm really good at this. You got to showcase your strengths, and hopefully if you're good at doing something, you're letting people know that you're good at doing it so that you can work together and put that out on TV and make good programming.
All right. Your big moment in 2007, and probably career-wise, because this is the biggest money-making show of all time, was WrestleMania 23, and you were there. You were at ringside. Bobby Lashley versus Umaga. You of course had Vince with you, and Lashley had Bobby Trump. Talk about working with Vince personally. He is one of the jokes with Dennis Miller made some years ago was that Vince came up to him and was giving him comedy advice. Was there any special advice that Vince gave you before WrestleMania?
At that point, I think they had already started to phase me out, and Vince gave me advice and pointers way before we even got to WrestleMania. I worked with him quite a bit. I got quite a bit of mic time on TV early on when I started, and Vince is very hands-on because it's his company, and that's the way it should be. So whether it was how to stand or when to look at the camera or when to turn and look at the audience, timing, there's a lot of small things that you're going to pick up from. There's a reason he's a successful businessman. He's ran a successful company for decades, and you can't help but learn when you're around him. Did I always agree with some of the things that he said? Absolutely not. But that's as a performer, I look at the canvas and I paint differently than anybody else. And Vince may look at a canvas and think, no, this is how you should paint. And sometimes he's right, and sometimes he's wrong. But if he's wrong, well, he never admitted it to me, but he would say that he's wrong. I'm the type that just give me the canvas and let me paint, and give me the bullet points, just like I learned, under Paul Heyman and Jim Cornette. They didn't write long-winded scripts for me. They said, here are the bullet points, go out there and talk, you got 5 minutes. And I think that's what wrestling needs to get back to. Because that's where the promos will all start to sound the same when you've got a group of 6 or 8 or 12 writers that are writing for the entire company. A lot of times, stuff will start to sound the same.
Okay, if you're listening live, the East Coast Cast is next, eastcoastcast.com, and listen to Travis and Bardray. Parental discretion is advised for that program. Armando, tell our great listeners how they can follow you on social media and keep track of what you're doing.
You can follow me at Real Armando Haha. That's Real Armando HAHA. That's my Twitter. I'm on Facebook, and for any promoters looking to bring in the most entertaining man in professional wrestling or sports entertainment, you can reach me at bookarmando@yahoo.com. I'm available for wrestling. I'm available to manage. I am available to general manage. I will juggle. I will throw darts at your head.
Oh, you juggle. That's great.
I do a lot of things.
Okay, Armando. Yes, you are. Armando, thank you very much for kicking off 2014 with us on the Pro Wrestling Torch Livecast, and we wish you and your family the best coming up this year.
Thank you, sir. Happy New Year to all my fans. I appreciate your support over the years, and you will see me soon. Ha-ha.
Yes. All right. Tomorrow on the program, James Caldwell will be hosting, so tune in then. We will play you out with one of our best audio clips of 2013 with sort of a New Year's theme. Good night, everybody.